All right, good evening. It's great to see so many people here tonight. Usually we're pretty lonely, so I'm happy to see that people took the time to come in today. It is Tuesday, April 8th, and we will go ahead and start our city council meeting. So, roll call, please.
Counselor Source,
Present.
Counselor Roden. Here. Counselor Boisvert,
Here.
Mayor Swartzman,
Here.
Counselor Martin Willis,
Here.
Counselor Morton.
Here.
Here.
All right, we do have several people that are going to provide testimony during the hearings, but we'll open it up to just general visitor public comments if we have any.
Do I do minutes? Approval of minutes?
Yes, sorry.
It's gonna
Get
be a
them right
long
ahead.
night, and you're trying to get us right through it.
Yeah. Trying to be efficient. Yes, sorry, we do need to approve the minutes for both the regular meeting on March 11th and then also our work session on March 25th.
I move to approve both sets of minutes as received.
Second. So, sorry. A motion by Councillor Morton and a second by Rivera. Discussion?
I feel comfortable approving the first set of minutes. I wasn't at attendance on the second, so having them combined, I'm not sure how to.
Can we just make a note of that or?
And I'm willing to amend my motion to include just the first set of minutes.
All right, so we will just do the first set of minutes. We still have the first and the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, thank you. Motion passes. So now we need a second motion for the work session on 3/25.
I move the March 25th, 2025 work session to approve the March 25th, 2025 work session.
Thank you.
Second.
Great, a motion by Source, a second by Martin Willis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Let's do a roll call.
Roll call.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Counselor Source,
Aye.
Counselor Roden, all abstain. Counselor Boisvert,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis,
Aye.
Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Counselor Court.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Mayor, we have moved most of your microphones up, please move them towards you. If you move them away, we've been getting complaints by people if they can't hear us. So,
Okay.
Mayor, you were doing great, but I noticed a couple of them got pushed back, so.
Thank you. Good reminder. Now we can go on to visitor and public comments. Again, these are for non-hearing and general public comments. Seeing none, we are going to move on to new business with our solid waste rate adjustment request.
Want me to,
Do you want to do?
Mayor Martin?
Did you want to do?
Sorry, gosh.
We were really trying to move
Was
this
I-
out.
We have such a large agenda tonight. I think we are just like wanting to like get through some of this. So I apologize. Yes, I am skipping way ahead of things. I just have a very short mayor's report. We have been busy with the budget. And that's really been what is taking most of our time. I'm continuing to do office hours, and that's been really great to talk with people, and I encourage people to stop by if they do have any questions. And then I've just had a lovely town hall, and it's a great opportunity for us to engage and ask questions in a more informal manner. So I appreciate that, and that's all I have for my report. And now we can do the liaison reports. First up is the Minot Board Councilor Source, and I know you just got appointed, so.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was not able to attend the first Minot Board meeting because of the transition of the appointment, and actually the mayor was able to attend on my behalf just to make sure that we had representation there. So I don't know if you feel comfortable giving a little bit of an update, Mayor.
I can give a quick update. So we are transitioning my position from the Minot Board over to Councilor Source. But I attended the meeting in March, and Minot is looking good. The financials are looking good. They have been doing some expansions into South Dallas, Rick Rial, and Falls City, and those are all on track and moving along. There's also just the general new construction that's going on, is beneficial again for these expansion projects, as well as info projects. And they are going to also be starting their, budget season, next week, I believe, so it's coming up very quickly. But they are on track to make all their debt payments, and so good news all around, from them.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Next up, we have, Parks Board with Council Rosen.
And there hasn't been a meeting since I've been appointed to this commission, so the next time I go to a meeting, I anticipate a good report. But there's nothing to report.
Thank you. And then the Independence Days Commission with Councilor Bowler.
Okay, good evening. We did meet on March 13th, and each of the subcommittees gave their presentations on how they're doing. Nothing really new to pass on. There were a couple updates as far as the headliner was announced that it was going to be Jacob Welding. He's a local country singer, as well as the string theory, the Tuesday String Band. Everyone's working hard, and right now there's no issues or anything that we foresee, and we have adopted a proposed budget that will be brought forward to the budget committee later on. And also, if I may, I was able to this week or last week sit with the staff of the city. We did their budget preparation to present to the budget committee. And I just want to thank the mayor and city manager West for allowing me to be there. Amanda Garrison was also there. And we really get to see each department right down to how much money they're spending on stamps. It was very eye-opening, and it was a great opportunity to be part of that. And thank you.
Thank you. Now I get to hand it over to you, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will hand it back because it's the budget, and more budget. Yes, no one wants to hear about that until April 16th.
There's a theme. All right, now we will go on to, we don't have any unfinished business, so new business, solid waste rate adjustment requests. No comment.
We do, thank you, Mayor. I'm bringing the staff report, and you've seen this before. As you know, from 2016 through 2023, Branch did not request a rate adjustment, a very minor surcharge, but did not request a rate adjustment. So that was 7 years without an increase. They came to the council and requested an increase of 7.8 and then 7.9. And that was all based upon their records. And as you look back, 7 years without an increase, they've been kind of behind the ball, and so they're catching up. This year, we sat with them, we went through everything. They're asking for a 4% increase across all services, again, playing catch up. In the documentation, you will see a comparative rate summary, and it's not quite apples to apples. A couple of things that I think are important for our community to know is Branch provides a 35-gallon container. Some of the comparatives are 32 gallons. So, for approximately the same price, our people are getting 3 gallons more. Same with the 65-gallon container. Some of the other jurisdictions are 60 and Branch provides 65. So again, for approximately the same, they are getting 5 gallons more. And again, with the 95-gallon container, others provide only 90 gallons. So based upon everything we saw, we would suggest that you move forward with the approval of the resolution. But I know that Mr. Brenner and Pastel are here if you have any questions on anything that is not in step.
Did we move on? You have questions? Would you like to speak? You have
I
questions?
would love to ask questions.
Yes,
Okay, please. My question has to do with the solid waste facility that will be coming in. Do these rate increases reflect any of that? Or will there possibly be another rate increase in about the time that it is finally finished, which is unclear at this point?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a little too far ahead, to plan out. I know that there's discussion to make sure, we at least examine that, however, it is kept out, of our report. But, the goal, I believe, for that, they have a lot of things to still go through. Land use, permitting and everything. Their goal is maybe 28 optimistic, 29 a little more realistic, 30. Real hopeful by then. And so it's something that we want to continue to discuss with the community, with both councils. And make sure that we're kind of on a good trajectory. The last thing I want, and I'm sure councils want, is to have a large number there. Again, to stay out of the land use side of what that is. There is some pretty good benefits eventually to that. If we don't have a landfill, the end of that, then we don't have an option without that. And also I'm real optimistic that you could see some pretty good efficiencies if it ends up going through in Rick Real. It's shorter distance than Coffin Butte. It's a lot of cement. All of my commodities would end up going there versus Portland and Salem and Benton County. So, I could see, that hit, might not quite be as drastic as people are talking about. I think we're getting close.
I won't anticipate a reduction in rates. for sure.
Unfortunately, right now, my industry is not necessarily going in that direction. But again, I do remain highly optimistic with the new recycling requirements coming out. It's just unfortunate, the last 10 years has been a pretty good push in the
Well,
industry.
Personally, I am very pleased with the job that your company is doing. I am impressed with the rates, and you do a service that I wouldn't want to have to take care of on my own.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Councilor Solis?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Brandt, appreciate all you do for our community, also another satisfied customer. Can you talk a little bit, for the purpose of the public, a little bit about the challenges you've had with tipping fees over at Coffee Butte and some of those costs that you've been incurring and not passing on to the consumer, as another way to kind of talk about why you're needing that right now?
Yeah, of course, that's a great question. So Coffin Butte has raised their rates, I want to say the last 6 years. I have future knowledge that is not slowing down. I actually have rates from then pushed out to 2027, and it is not a great number as well. So with their continued increase, of course, that's one of my largest expenses, and somewhat out of my control. So to bring it back a little bit to that transfer station, again, I'm not here to talk about, that's not me that's doing it. But again, those numbers that they were talking about, of tipping fees, getting somewhere in the $80 range, is getting a lot closer, like I was saying. And, like I said, with Coffin Butte, still being regulated, the conversations that I have with them are pretty slim. Republic Services owns that. And, unfortunately, with their decline in space, that becomes much more valuable with the less space that's available. And unfortunately for us as a community, that is a hit to us. That price continues to raise. And unfortunately, I don't see that ending currently, as I said, to 2027. I have some numbers for it. So, that's a big one. The other large one for me that I really like to talk about is my mechanic. I use Dave's Mobile and Rick Burrell. I don't have on site. The reason for that is we have quite a few fleet, but not a massive number to where I could have somebody on staff all the time. I really try to run an efficient company. That is why I drive trucks still. I wear 12 different hats, and I enjoy that part. So no complaint from me. But they, like that, like our industry, their industry's been hit well, pretty heavy, parts especially. So I was originally at a 130 an hour, for labor. That was, about a year and a half ago. Since then, I've been bumped up to 160, which is a pretty fair amount, pretty large amount, in that amount of time. However, I do want to make it known that, Dave's Mobile, is an unbelievably family-owned company. They do a fantastic job. They have 8 mechanics, 3 trucks down. They all 3 get worked on right away. And I have done my due diligence, asked around the state, at completely different communities, similar communities, et cetera. And the going rate right now for that type of service is about $210 an hour. So with that increase for us, which is a hit to that bottom line, again, I feel like, you know, I understand where they're coming from. They've communicated that to me. Again, we discussed that. But unfortunately, one of those hits, but I still feel really good about using them. You know, I think if that number starts to get a little more out of control, then I think it's, you know, like I always do, continue to look at ways to improve my business, try to make sure that I can find more efficient ways so it's not passed on my community. You know, we're fortunate. We've done this now since 1953 in both Monmouth and Independence. And, you know, I really enjoy having the lowest rates around. And I want to continue that. So if the community's treated me well, and I want to make sure that I can do my best and all the due diligence I can to make sure that I continue to give them a very favorable rating.
Thank you for doing
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for being here. I too am a satisfied customer and I love your service and what you do for our community. I'm a little hesitant though, because a lot of families are living paycheck to paycheck, and it seems like all of our fees are going up. And I don't want to put a huge burden on people who are already struggling. If we are to do this rate increase tonight, do you anticipate another rate increase in the near or not too distant future?
You know, I hope not. Again, with Coffin Butte being out of my hands and the tipping fees being such a large number, right now, I would love to say, and my feeling is that I hopefully will not be, I mean, I'd love to see you all. But my goal would be to not be here next year. I know that we would like to be on a better schedule. That 7 years was a little bit too long for us. Smaller numbers would be a little bit easier to understand and see. So I would like to get on a little bit more of possibly an every other year thing and hopefully keep it down around the CPI type of process. But again, I don't anticipate my repairs and maintenance. I do have, you know, as trucks start to turn over, unfortunately, the cost of that goes up. But yeah, I'm hopeful not. And that was part of the reason this increase, you know, I'd come in the last 2 years. I was kind of hoping not. Coffin Butte used to raise about $2 a ton every year. This year it jumped to $4 a ton, which is a pretty substantial number. I know it's going to jump that next year. But I think as we've done our due diligence the last few years, I think it's a much higher possibility that we can stay out of here. And then with the new recycling requirements, that is handled by the government, which is going to pass less on to our community. So we may see some efficiencies there, which could be helpful. It's going to take time to kind of see that and assess it. But, you know, that's what, when Estill and I were discussing this, you know, we had the plan of potentially holding off. But again, the last thing I want to do is continually come in for 8%. That's not really what I'm interested in. I am interested in doing my best again to be efficient. And my largest worry was falling too far behind, especially with my industry changes right now. With so much going on, I would love to not be too far behind. And trying to, it's not the main reason, but trying to make sure that we're staying in a reasonable number for the changes that could be happening in 3 years as well. But like I'd love to mention too, you know, for somebody with a 35-gallon cart, their total increase for this year, for the entire year, would be $12. So when we hear a percentage of 4, if we don't have context for it, it can seem like a pretty drastic number. If you have a 95-gallon, it's under $2 a month, which again, we're looking at about $24 a year increase. You know, the other thing, you know, it's not nothing, so I completely understand. I will say, you know, we have a unique billing style. Part of the reason is to save money. If I have to invoice 6,000 people every month, that's a substantial cost. So that's why we have the 2-month and the 3-month billing. So a lot of people are on a month billing. But you know, we really try to, as long as the communication's there with every customer, I try to find every way possible to make sure that service is continued. I'm very, I am very easy on that. Again, I say it all the time. My job is really simple. It's picking up trash, and that's our goal, is to try to make the community, keep the community clean, be there for the customers. Unfortunately, there's times when people have to be stopped for lack of payment. A lot of that reason is because it's just a lot of grunt work, and unfortunately, if my costs raise, that doesn't just get pushed on to one customer, that gets pushed on to even the people that are doing a fantastic job. So it's balancing that. So the long-winded answer, but my goal would be to not see it next year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Action item?
I move to approve resolution 25-1630, a resolution granting a rate adjustment to Brand Sanitary Service.
We have a motion by Core, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Morton. Can we roll call please? What, any discussion, sorry, any discussion?
I just want to say I appreciate all the work you do to try to keep your costs as low as possible. It's inevitable that costs will go up. We can't really control a lot of it, but I do appreciate you taking the interest in the community and trying to do what you do at the best possible cost.
Thank you.
Counselor Court, Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Lewis,
Aye.
Counselor Waver,
Aye.
Counselor Rhoden. Aye. Counselor Source.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, thank you.
All right, next up, we have presentation of audited financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2024.
The goofiest microphone I've ever seen. It's a good thing I'm tall. So, Madam Mayor, members of council, thanks for having us tonight. My name is Rob Moody. I'm the finance director for the city. And I'm joined by Cyrus Ward, an audit manager with Aldridge, our independent CPA firm. So we're gonna kind of tag team this for you this evening. I want to talk about a couple things. First of all, understanding that the financial statements are the city's financial statements. A lot of times after we go through an audit and the auditors put their opinions and their reports with them, people have this misconception that they're the auditor's financial statements. And as much as I'd like to pass that responsibility off to them, they're ours. We actually drafted these this year ourselves in-house, which I'll admit contributed to a bit of the delay in bringing these to you. I drafted them, and so while I enjoy doing that, I also learned some things in doing so this year. But so that's the first point I wanted to make. And now I've forgotten the second point, so I'm hoping it comes back to me. But I want to spend just a couple minutes with you explaining kind of the layout of the document. And I'm not gonna read it to you. You can put it next to your bed and it'll help you sleep well for the next year or so. But the financial statements are really separated into three sections. There's the section in the back that is the budgetary schedules, the budget to actual by fund. And that's really the most meaningful part of the whole thing for you, and for members of our community who understand that that's how we keep our books typically during the year, is kind of almost on a checkbook basis. It's, what was our budget? What did we spend? How do those compare? The middle section is what we call the fund statements, and they're presented on a GAAP basis, a generally accepted accounting principles basis, which doesn't mean a whole lot to anybody except CPAs. And then the front section is what we call our full accrual entity-wide statements, and they mean even less to folks other than CPAs, just to be blunt about it. It kills me to say that as a CPA, I love this stuff, but it's really hard to explain to anybody what those numbers mean. They're at a very, very high level. I always tell people, if you really kind of want to get a feel for this thing, take a look at the management's discussion and analysis, which begins on page 4. It's right after the auditor's opinion. It's written in plain English to try and get you from where we were at the end of last year or the prior year to where we were at the end of last year. And it does a little bit of comparison between years and tries to explain what those differences are. The other piece that I want people to pay attention to is the notes to the financial statement that begin on page 25 of the report. Again, there's a lot of pretty useful information in there that helps explain the numbers in the financial statements. Again, it's not light reading, it's pretty dense, but there's a lot of information in there. Those fund statements that I talked about for some of the major funds begin on page 70. And then the rest of those budget comparison schedules begin on page 91 and take you through the end of the report. In terms of, this being brought to you again very late, and we know that it takes a lot to put the financial statements for a government together. Our fiscal year ends in June. Typically, it takes us 2 to 3 months just to get kind of the year closed and those reconciliations prepared. The auditors came in October, if I remember right, October, November. And then there was the drafting process. You may remember we were a team member short in finance during that period. So anyways, here we are. And we're very pleased to have this off of our plates just in time so we can start planning for the next one. The financial statements are posted on the website for both the city and the Urban Renewal Agency as of today, so folks can download them there and run their fingers through them, do whatever they'd like with them. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Cyrus to talk about the auditor's opinions and reports, and then we can take questions from the council.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody, for having me. I know going over financial statements isn't everybody's most exciting thing of all time. I thoroughly enjoy it, which is why I do it professionally. But the main items that we wanted to go through was just touching on the financial statements a little bit. Kind of what Rob was saying, the important thing remembering that these are the financial statements of the city, of management, of the team that actually operates within the financial aspects of the city. The audit and what we perform is not a documentation of how the performance of the city operates, anything like that. It is simply fact-finding information that the information provided in this report is materially accurate. And so we have different thresholds that we apply for getting our understanding of items that we'll test and risk areas that we identify. And so I want to just make sure we have that discussed as we start looking through then the auditor reports. So the first item that I want to walk through was the communication with governments, being the city council members themselves. And so I believe you all have that report. What this essentially goes through is it documents and communicates key aspects in a more digestible format than the 50-ish pages of the actual audited financial statements. Some of the main items that we discuss in this letter are significant estimates that the city has to undertake. As Rob was mentioning, the budget and actual statements are the more useful information for counselors, for the public at large who are interested in the financial performance of cities and counties and other governmental entities. And as you kind of work forward through the fund statements and the government-wide statements, more things become or come onto the books that are outside of the control of the actual management team and the operations of the city. Items like net pension liability from PERS and OPEB plans, things like that start cropping up for those total liabilities that are shared across all entities throughout the state and are more outside of the control, but they ultimately make it into the financial statements for full GAAP purposes, but are not necessarily as useful when making decisions that the city has going forward. And so we highlight those on the first page as some useful estimates that are being undertaken by the city. We also discuss depreciation expense as another one for capital assets. City has lots of assets in roads, buildings, and things of that nature, and some estimates are required on that end as well. On that second page, we discuss also in high level terms how the audit essentially went. So we didn't have any difficulties encountered in performing the audit. As Rob has mentioned, delays within the actual drafting process and reconciliation becomes difficult as cities have a 60 to 90-day closing window. And within any kind of city or municipality, there's lots of items that go into reconciling those. So it can add a little bit of strain. There's a discussion of corrected and uncorrected misstatements. Within this document, there's a section that will detail out the journal entries that were either identified by Rob throughout his drafting process and then ultimately corrected to the books as they were presented to us as we started procedures, or small items that we might have identified and made correction on. So if you have any questions on those, I'm always open to talk journal entries with anybody. Most people don't really take me up on that offer. Yeah. No, I need to. And then we discussed the disagreements with management if we had any, which we did not. Working with Rob and the team is wonderful. Kim is a wonderful person to work with as well. We've really enjoyed being out here. It's also pretty close to my house. I live in South Salem Hills, and so I just drive down pretty quickly for the job. And then we discuss a couple more items for required supplementary information and other items that appear within the financial statements that are items that we perform technical audit procedures over, as much as we get some reports from the state, provide inquiry and do some analytical discussions over those. And finally, at the very end of this document, there is the actual management representation letter, which are just statements that we ask management to provide to us to ensure that all financial records were provided to us as necessary at our request, the information is complete. There's a list of different representations that we ask for. And they sign and agree to that. And, we're fully disclosing to us throughout the audit, which is always wonderful and what we're looking for. So are there any questions over that initial item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have a couple, if that's okay. So the first, thank you for the presentation. Did you find any, did you have any findings?
Yeah, so those are actually ones we're gonna go over next throughout the office reports.
The other question I had, is going into the Minnet debt. It clearly states that Minnet is fully paying, their debt obligation back to the city. Did you find anything that suggests otherwise?
Nothing to my recollection that there's anything in that regard.
Thank you, thank you.
Your term useful estimate, does that mean that the city is being responsible and doing their due diligence in order to create an estimate that won't surprise us later?
Yeah, so that's the hope. Unfortunately, with estimates, sometimes they are just what they are, a reasonable guess that you have. Say, an example that would be a vehicle that you think is gonna last 7 years, but it lasted 10 years. You depreciated over 7 years, you had 3 more years of useful life that didn't get allocated out smoothly. And so technically, that would be a change in the estimate, but not something that.
But you don't think it's a shot in the dark, you think there's actually some due
No.
diligence behind it, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't mean to jump ahead, I found this report concerning in many, many ways. And I spent a great deal of my life over the last weekend in this report. Are we gonna go over? So I don't want to be premature. Are we gonna go over page 157 and 158? And that's what I have, so I don't want to jump ahead of this.
I think those are the minimum standards reports, if I remember right. Yeah, yes, so we're gonna touch on that.
So I'm really concerned about the debt to income ratio that we have in our city. I'm alarmed at what is in this report, even if it's accurate. I think everybody should be well aware that our debt in the city is extremely high. It is $35.3 million at the end of this fiscal year. Even on page 49 of this report, it says we only have approximately $2.9 million that we can continue to borrow, and then we'd meet our 3% general obligation that the government entity allows us to have. My question is, on page 49, one of the questions I have is, how do we assess that the city of Independence has $1.42 billion in real market evaluation?
So real market valuation comes down from the actual state's assessment of the real property that's owned within the city limits. So that's ultimately where that comes from, and then it's applied to those actual ratios, like the 3% general obligation debt that you can actually have for your real market value. So that's where the application comes from.
Okay, so then, and this is before our current city manager, so I'm not trying to put anything down. I've been jumping on this debt issue since I started council 4 years ago. I'm just really, really concerned about it, and this brought up a lot of, I'm gonna wait, because I think you're gonna go over some of my concerns, and so I want to jump ahead, but I do reserve the right to ask my questions.
Madam Mayor, can I follow up? Just to follow up with my colleague, correct me if I'm wrong, but I also read in this report that the debt that the city has incurred is dropping. Is that correct? We are paying off
Being paid down, yes.
in a substantial ways, tens of thousands of dollars less in debt than we were simply last year based on this report. Is that correct?
I believe so, and one of the findings actually that we'll discuss within the URA was over expenditure of paying down additional debt.
Well, how can that possibly be correct? We haven't even started paying for this building yet. How can we possibly say we're not in debt? We've only been paying the interest payments on this building. We haven't been paying any principal. So we have to be in debt.
Madam Mayor. We actually have been making principal and interest payments on the debt on this building for years and continue to.
So what is the new payments coming on this building this year?
I'm sorry, what?
There's new payments coming on this building then this year. Is that not correct?
I'm not sure what you're asking, but we're making scheduled debt and scheduled principal and interest payments each year.
Questions?
So within the actual financial statements themselves, I believe page 1 through 3 are the independent auditors reports for the city. And then reflective also on the financial statements for the URA is another accompanying independent auditors report for that entity as well. So I'm going to kind of take them on both at the same time, as they are very similar in the breadth of what they cover. Within the auditor's report, the first item that comes up is the opinion, which is what everybody cares about, whether there were any items that would make us have to adjust our opinion. And so we are going to be issuing a clean opinion, which is the best opinion that can be received for the city and the URA. And again, the audited financial statements and our perspective and what we perform over them is nothing to do with the performance of the city or any ratios that might occur within them, or revenues, expenses, debt. It is in terms of the presentation of the financial information themselves, and if those are materially accurate to the support that is provided by the city. And so we have clean opinions on those, which is great. That's what hopefully everybody is looking for. We have little paragraphs discussing the basis for our opinions, discussing the standards that we as auditors are held to. So auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America are the items that we are held to. And then there's a section that talks about the responsibilities of management. So again, the idea that financial statements are those financial statements of management. They're responsible for the clear presentation of information and complete reporting of all data. And then following that is another touch on the auditor's responsibility, so that we are performing within professional skepticism in mind, that we are making sure that our assessments are being performed with objectivity, and that we are actually going through and determining whether there's underlying data to support the actual numbers being presented within the financial statements. On the second page of the auditor's report, there's a couple more items that are discussed in terms of what we are held to as our auditors requirements. And then there's touched on the required supplementary information for items, kind of as I mentioned within the letter for those charged with governance, that there's some items that are within this report that are not having audited or audit procedures specifically applied to them, but they are getting an in relation to opinion for the comparison to the financial statements, making sure that the information doesn't in a short degree. And at the very end, you will see our date and our sign by Andrew Mafia, who is the partner who oversees our governmental practice, as well as a reference to the Oregon State Regulations Minimum Standards Report, which is the one that we are going to be discussing to go over the findings. So before I move on to the minimum standards report, are there any questions that anybody has within the audit report itself?
Yes. I know there was a question earlier about the MyNet debt, and I'm looking at the bottom of page 1 on your report, or the first page of your report. And it says the management's estimate of the allowance for doubtful accounts related to the receivables from MyNet is determined by the city based on historical data and projected conclusions. Do you still consider that debt to be doubtful?
I can actually answer that, Counselor Morton. We looked at that, and in being conservative, we believe that, again, year to year, MyNet continues to show the ability to pay their debt to the city. To take that off of to remove that allowance would generate a big spike, if you will, in the financial statements, in that we would, I can't remember now which way it goes, whether it's a big gain or a big loss. I think it's a big gain. And then if something were to change, going back and forth, we believe, the city believes, is less useful and less consistent in its presentation than simply maintaining that allowance. There's no harm, no foul in maintaining that allowance, and it's only on those front statements, if you will. But we don't consider that a direct reflection on MyNet's ability to service their debt. It's simply a presentation thing in the financial statements, in maintaining the statements in accordance with GAAP.
Okay, and looking forward as we move into the budget process, the budget will include an assumption that MyNet will continue to pay its debt.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So just to further clarification on that point you brought up, MyNet is paying their debt monthly or however they do it, but there's still a huge pocket of money that we have written off that they will not pay ever, correct?
I'm unaware of anything that has ever been written off.
Well, because they didn't go into black and start paying us evenly. They were in the red until, what, 18, 19 months ago. It was the first time that they'd ever paid the debt completely, less than 2 years ago. So before that, they were not paying their debt. So what I'm saying is there's a large amount of money that they have not paid that we could have used in other areas of our budget, but we had to absorb those costs or write them off completely.
My understanding is that we have taken those costs that were not paid. We negotiated a settlement with them in that we have recorded a receivable and they are paying on that receivable as scheduled currently. I'm not aware that we have written anything off now that I've only been here a couple of years, but that's my understanding.
I think that's something that we should, I know we've written it off and it's making it sound like I'm just making up money here, but I think that's something that we need to look into because I think that's important for the people to understand that yes, MyNet might be breaking even right now, but they didn't for years. It didn't for years.
And I think I can provide just a little bit of context on that without getting too into the weeds with it. Correct, there was a time when MyNet was not able to repay, but it's not like we just wrote that off. There's accounting for that. There's a total for that. And my understanding is that they will be paying that back.
That's my understanding as well, council.
Mayor.
Madam Mayor, sorry. I was speaking generally. Ouch.
Any other further questions?
All right, the last, or second to last, I suppose, sections will be going over the, what is called the independent auditors reports required by state regulations, often referred to as the minimum standards report. So these have, wide encompassing items that are required for any municipality. The biggest one, is local budget law, which is, the actual governing documents behind the budget and actuals that are actually presented within the financial statements themselves. So there are two reports, one reflected for the city, one reflected for the URA, in which it is discussed that there is compliance over these set protocols that are set by Oregon revised statutes. And so there's a detailed listing of some of the major items, including depositories, indebtedness, budget legally required, which is chapter 294, local budget law, which is the main one, as well as public procurements and other items that might be reflective of the city's requirements. So we did have findings related to the city and URA. You will see them detailed at the bottom of the first page and then on the second page as well. The first one is essentially a classification item within the budget. The city was currently, or at that time, for the 2023-2024 budget, was budgeting for reserves for future expenditures. It's not technically something that you're supposed to be doing. It would just flow to the actual reserve at the very end, which will roll into future capital. It's a classification item, but within compliance for Oregon revised statutes, there's no materiality or application leveling. It's a pass or don't. And so that's one of the findings. The second one is another similar item for contingencies being within a fund that technically can't have a contingency is. So contingency is kind of a catch-all for, well, we have these classifications of expenses. There's one more that we have as kind of a fungible number that in case we need to move money in, we can do that. And so there was one that's fund that was mainly for debt that had that in. None of it was actually spent, I don't believe, but it was just part of the actual presentation, so it would be a finding as well. On the second page, you'll see interfund loans, another technical item where interfund loans were being classified incorrectly rather than being shown as debt service. They were being paid within the two funds themselves, and so the actual payments were as scheduled and were moving properly, but the technical budget category was incorrect. So those three are general high-level rules that, you know, auditors like to nab people on things. The final finding is one that is over the appropriations that are made exceeding for the actual amount spent versus the budget. Now, it's not necessary that these are for the fund itself overextending what it in total is allowable, but within the actual categories of appropriation. So if you budget based off of materials and services, capital outlay, personnel services, if you budget $100,000, you're not supposed to go over 100,000. So if you spend 110, then you'd have a $10,000 finding on that because it went over on that budget category. Even if in total you were under in that fund by $100,000 and you spent $100,000 less than you thought, you would still have a finding for $10,000. And so there was a number of funds and budget categories that occurred. Oftentimes we see that as cities are trying to be reactive to covering payments and miscategorization of items, or there's not a transfer of items in the more appropriate measure that would occur. And then finally, there's a discussion of the internal control. We didn't find any major items of concern for significant deficiencies or material weaknesses within internal control. Our audit does not encompass a true internal control exam. That is something that can be performed for entities, often through SOC 1 rules. But it is not something that is encompassing in ours, but we do keep our eyes open for any items that might be areas of concern within controls and make recommendations accordingly, or we would report them here if they were major significant items. Yes.
So you're saying then, my math on this is that, our over expenditures for that year were $715,697. But you're saying that just because those categories could have been over our entire budget, still could have been fine? So this report doesn't tell us which categories were actually over the entire category?
These are just the highlighted individual categories that were over. If you look at the individual funds listed on the left side, you can go to the actual fund budget and actual page, and they should be highlighted, or not highlighted, but it could be indicated as to where the over expenditure were. The only one that would be a little difficult to track, but the total would be correct, would be on the general fund, because the appropriation and categorization is a little slightly different on the budget for the general fund, but the other ones should be able to be seen.
So, just so I'm clear, because I think what Councilor Rodin's asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, is are all the funds balancing out at the end of the day? So you're over exceeding in one area, but it's not, we're not in this, on this piece of paper, you're not seeing the other funds that are kind of paying that difference, right? Is that how that's working?
And
Because we're talking about transfers, right? We're talking about transfers, we're talking about.
yes, so, well, technically within the operation, what would occur is you would have a supplemental budget might occur to increase $100,000 for an additional expense that you weren't expecting. And so that is kind of how, what did not occur. But yes, in total, the fund in theory could be under its allowable total expenditure for the year compared to what the budget was.
Okay.
Can we go over one in particular, just so I can have a better understanding of it? So it says that under the grants program, the capital outlay is the budget category,
On what one? Sorry, I was.
the grants program, and it says capital outlay. And it says that our budget was 49,000 and change, and we actually spent 462,000 and change. So you're saying that just because we spent $462,000 more than we thought we were spending in that category, that overall we're still even in that category?
Yeah, so if you look at page 72 is the actual grants programs fund, and so capital outlay was 49,000, like you said, ish, and then for the budget, and then the actual was 462 on the actual side.
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
72.
It's 72 of the actual financial statements. I don't know what page number it is in your document.
We have both numbers on our page, so I wanted to make sure that it's correct. Okay, proceed.
But you'll see reflected there on the materials and services side, 1.5 million was the final budget line item, but 370,000 was actually spent. And so that's what I'm talking about, where it could be $400,000 over for this specific item for the capital outlay. But the overall fund is, let's see, revenues over within the budget of 2.17, 1.2 of that being revenues or expenses being under what was budgeted.
Can I ask one more thing on that? So in something like grants, a lot of that is predicated on whether or not grants are received and taken into the account. So with the initial expected expenditure out of the city funds, expenditures may go up because there was grant money that was received to offset that.
That, yes, that is very well possible, which is a finding that we find pretty consistently with the different municipalities. On the URA, you also see the same kind of report. I won't go over the main general items because they are very much reflective of the cities. But the same kind of thing with the general debt service category for the URA overextending on the debt service side by $204,000. And so I think if you look at the report page, it's principal and interest broken out between the two, of which was additional payments. The last item then would be the actual compliance over federal spending, which is a hot topic these days. Within the City of Independence, there were funds received. There's several different grants they could receive in a variety of different items. And so if you are over $750,000 spent of federal funding, you are subject to what's called single audit, uniform guidance technically. The City of Independence was able to exercise a special caveat within the provisions of the coronavirus relief funds, which is very nice, to do an alternative engagement to a full single audit, which full single audit can be much more costly comparatively to the alternative engagement, which provides similar coverage, but you just have to do a lot less documentation, which to me happy as well. But we were happy to have that there were no items that we noted for any expenditures that were outside of the allowable costs and the allowable activities for the federal compliance with the coronavirus relief funds. Great. And you'll see that reflected in the report. We don't provide any specific legal determination over this. It is, again, just like all of our audit reports, that the information that we were presented and that we were able to actually garner support for was in compliance with the regulations of the federal government. Interestingly enough, we received received a notification from the GFOA and the federal government that there has been questions going out for people who have findings now within the federal programs. And so that's great that there were no findings, as hopefully that'll keep everybody off stage backs.
Yes, Evan. So in your professional opinion, I know you said you were giving the city a clean audit, but the findings that you found are pretty common among cities, similar size, similar staffing levels.
You'll see similar findings within respective entities. It's hard to generalize specifically to one entity, how their performance is or anything like that, especially as different cities and counties have a variety of different aspects in terms of their operations. But the findings that we have are ones that I've consistently found within many different organizations.
Thank you.
And council, if I could make just a couple of quick comments with respect to the findings, we will be addressing each of the findings identified by the auditors and reporting back to you on progress for addressing those. The budgeting findings with respect to budgeting reserves and contingencies, we've already addressed those in the preparation of the 25-26 budget document. The interfund loans, we've corrected that for the 24-25 audit and in the 25-26 budget document. So we're moving on those things as well. And the over expenditures, we'll just own those and tell you that we do everything we can to try and monitor those. And we'll be stepping up our game a little bit and hopefully get away from those findings with the following year's audit.
I move to accept the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Court, a second by Councilor Source. Do we have any questions or debates?
I would just like to say thank you for clarifying the statements, and thank you again for saying that you're gonna come forth and be more transparent transparent with our over expenditures. When I read this report and read about the over expenditures, I was in shock. I thought something horrible had happened in our budget, and why weren't we aware of it until we got this audit significantly late? So it makes me hesitant on making me very cautious moving forward with this budget, that we do it the best we can possibly do to represent the city and the people in the best we can with our budget.
And I
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I appreciate you explaining this in some layman's terms, not entirely all. It's a difficult document to take on, but thank you, Mr. Moody, for your assurances that we're gonna do what we need to do to clean up any of these findings, and I'm glad to know that they're pretty much common across entities.
And I am grateful to hear that interfund loans are being eliminated to the point of total extinction. And also because we've heard a couple of times about the financing and the payments and so on this building, that might be a good sidebar to have in the audit process to show that payments and principal and interest are being made. Not the audit process, the budget process.
And you are bringing us probably about quarterly, right? Kind of interim reports, so that's been, I think, helpful for us as a council to have that to go along the way, so we're moving in the right direction. All right, with no further question, are we ready for a vote? All right, so roll call, Margaret.
Counselor Source.
Aye.
Counselor Roden. Aye. Counselor Boisvert.
Aye.
Counselor Martin Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Morton.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. All right. Now we are gonna do our first public hearing. You kind of switch gears there real quick. So I have statement to read. Where's this? All right, this evening we have a public hearing on annexation number 2025-01 to consider annexation of certain rights of way into the city of Independence. The city council will make a final decision based on the complete record, including the testimony received at tonight's public hearing. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and state of Oregon. This is a type 3 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria of the city's comprehensive plan and/or state of Oregon statewide planning goals. For anyone wishing to speak, we are asking you to use the speaker cards that are provided. Thank you, many people have provided them. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and you must state your name and address for public record. Before we begin, does any counselor wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? And none. We will now open the public hearing for AX 2025-01, annexation of certain rights of way into the city of Independence. And I believe we have a staff report.
That's correct.
No.
That's not on. Sorry about that. We have to unplug the and try to. All right.
Right.
Hi there, everybody. Sorry about that technical difficulty. My name is Fred Evander. I'm the city planner here at the City of Independence, and I am here to present on the annexation of 3 rights of way as part of this public hearing. The 3 rights of way in question are Corvallis Road, Hoffman Road, and a portion of the old 6th Street, which is not the actual 6th Street right there. It's Myra, can you bring up that map that we have on, shoot, I have the page 214 of the packet, Myra?
Sure.
I believe, yes, so that gives you a sense of where those rights way, the portion of Hoffman Road, a portion of the old 6th Street, and a portion of Corvallis Road. Now, this is very similar to an annexation that you folks did relatively recently of 13th Street, portions of Gun Club Road, portions of Talmadge Road, portions of Stryker Road. And basically the goal is to ensure that the city has jurisdiction of all the roads within the urban growth boundary. That's the sole reason that this annexation is being proposed. As you'll remember, previously, the reason that our public works department in particular wants control of these roads is to ensure that the construction or reconstruction of the roads occurs in accordance with city standards. For example, right now, how the standards work is if somebody were to try and develop the road, they would actually work with the county, and the county would use the city's standards to try and develop the road. What our public works department is particularly concerned about is that in that process, something gets lost in the mix, and all of a sudden we have a road that is not built in accordance with our standards. That's one of the main reasons. Another reason that we, our public works department would like the control of these roadways too, is to ensure that when people develop along the roads, they're dealing with one agency, the City of Independence, instead of two agencies. Now, as an example, you can see on that portion of Corvallis Road right there, perfect, right where your mouse is, Myra, don't move your mouse at all, that's perfect. You'll see a portion that juts out there, that is 6525 Corvallis Road, that was recently annexed by the city. As part of that annexation, there's the Corvallis Road right of way. As part of a minor partition that individual conducted on that property, the city required 7 feet of right of way for that division. Based on that, when he comes in, he has to work with the city on the 7 feet, and he has to work right now with the county on the rest of the road. Rather than having that 2-agency process, what this is intended to do is make it one agency that an individual would have to deal with. Also, lastly, another reason to specifically do this is to ensure that the city can control the speed limits and set any sort of speed safety zones along the roadways. That in particular, we have plans to intentions to slow the speed of Corvallis Road as it nears the bridge. Having us control the roadway would enable us to do that in a much more simple way. Now, there's other reasons as well. The city does have a Corvallis Road waterline project that they would like to achieve. But primarily it's those three main things, just to ensure you're working with, and property developers are working with one agency to ensure that the roads are built in accordance with city standards and to allow the city to manage the roads essentially. The review of this proposal is intended to be done in accordance with Oregon State planning goals, the countywide planning policies, the Independence Comprehensive Plan, and the Independence Development Code. You will note my analysis of all of those things in the staff report for this. I won't go into too much detail associated with that. We have run this through the normal process. We sent notice to properties within 250 feet of each of these roadways. We do know that individuals did receive that notice because we have gotten comments about it. We did receive 2 comment letters as well. I know that I believe the 2 individuals that submitted comments are in the audience, so rather than responding to those before they had a chance to comment, I'll allow them a chance to comment and then respond to any issues that that they might have raised. In short, based on all of the materials in the staff report and based on everything that we have heard to date, we would recommend approval of this annexation. I will say something just real quick about the portion of the old 6th Street the portion of the old Sixth Street is kind of a weird thing. It's unlike the portion of Corvallis Road and the portion of Hoffman Road. That portion actually includes properties that in some cases are built across the line, right? City standards and the intergovernmental agreement with Polk County says we're not supposed to extend water utilities across the city limits line, right? And so I don't know exactly how those houses work, right? It's a weird thing where a garage is in a county and the rest of the house is in the city. So what this also, I thought it was 4 properties that were partially built on that had that sort of thing that's straddled it. In the process of the notice, we actually heard from another property that said, hey, I get 2 tax bills. One is for a foot strip of county in my backyard. Would this get rid of my foot strip in the county? And I wrote to the county, and indeed it would. So it would clean up this really odd portion of unincorporated Polk County that's in the center of Independence by the inclusion of the old Sixth Street. So that's really the proposal in a nutshell. Again, we would recommend that you folks approve it, but we would also recommend that you have a good listen to what folks have to say. Are there any questions?
All right, none. So for testimony, we do wish to hear from everyone who's interested in this proposal. We are asking that you please limit your comments and questions to 3 minutes in length. And remember to state your name and address for the record. So I'm gonna take testimony in order here. First up is Rich Fry. You want to come forward for the testimony?
Yes, thank you, Rich Fry.
You might have to-
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
You can stay there.
It doesn't matter.
You can state your name and address.
I will do that.
If we can say.
The whole- I got it. Yeah, my name is Rich Fry. The address is 9885 Buena Vista Road. I just had a couple of questions about the proposal here. And I'm mostly concerned with Hoffman Road. And I know that there was just a intergovernmental agreement to do the frontages there on Gun Club and Hoffman Road, that those have been done. Is there any additional right of way that's going to be surrendered?
I do not know the answer to that question. That's a question for our public works director, who's unfortunately not here tonight.
I'd say you're talking about annexing the roadway though, but are you don't know if there's gonna be any additional?
I assume that the improvements got built at the current at the anticipated right of way. Configuration. If that makes sense. I can't imagine that we would have put in right of way improvements and then come back and said, we actually want more right of way to put this sidewalk further over, if that makes sense.
Okay, and I believe that there was actually right of way given up 10 or so years ago, sometime during that time. And so there's no additional, and what about so the county is no longer gonna have any portion of that road then in front of that, in this section is gonna be the full width of the right of way will be city, or does it just go to the center of the road? I'm trying to understand.
As the, so as a legal description, and I'm sorry, it's okay for me to answer, is that correct? Yeah, as the legal description is written, yes, it would include the full width of Hoffman Road. Across that, across going down Hoffman Road to the extent of city limits.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Phil and Straw.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, and City Councilors. My name is Phil Straw. My address is 233 Mountain Vista Avenue Southeast, Salem, Oregon. I have an interest in the property located at 6675 Corvallis Road, and I'm opposed to the annexation application. After reviewing the staff report, it is clear that the land use application is inconsistent. The type 3 action provision is defined by section 11,002, C3 of the Independence Development Code. This section of code states that when an annexation and zone change applications are requested concurrent with one another, the city council can review the request without review or recommendations from the planning commission. In this case, however, the area proposed for annexation is not real property with an assigned zoning. Therefore, since a zone change application should not be included when annexing these right of ways, the annexation application is required to be reviewed by a planning commission before the city council considers a recommendation of either approving or denying the application. Thank you for your time. Can I answer any questions?
So I have, I guess, point of clarification, are you concerned about the road annexation or the property annexation?
Sorry, the annexation of Corvallis Road is going to the urban.
If you would like me to respond to each of these, I can take notes of each of the comments and try and respond to them at the end as a way to consolidate it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Eric Hill.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. My name is Eric Hill. My address is 33775 Wildwood Estates Loop in Harrisburg, Oregon. I have an interest in the property at 6485 Corvallis Road here in Independence. Our family has owned that property for the last 5 generations and founded this town. So first and foremost, I intend to reserve our rights to an appeal. The letter that we received is probably ambiguous at best. It refers to the comprehensive plan and the development codes. And naturally, we had limited time to review all this material. But it essentially boils down to what your city planner here defines as a major arterial for Corvallis Road, or what that exactly is defined as. Because with that would define what edge of right of way to edge of right of way width is. So as the previous gentleman spoke about, the question really becomes, is the current right of way going to stay where it is, or will it be expanded? And certainly if it's expanded, then we oppose this. If it is staying where it currently is, then we are neutral on this point. So that is our question. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Sean and Michelle Lewis.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Michelle Lewis. Sorry, my husband had to leave for an appointment. We live at 6240 Corvallis Road. I did officially deliver a letter to you guys in opposition to this annexation of Corvallis Road. I am privy because my parents have lived on Corvallis Road, and since in the last 20 years, my husband and I also purchased property on Corvallis Road. I'm privy to information that at one point, the city of Independence tried to annex the property at 6295 Corvallis Road into the city limits, stating that it was an island. After an attorney was sought after, it was determined that in fact it wasn't an island because Corvallis Road belonged to the county. And though the city of Independence is surrounding the property, Corvallis Road, acted as the county, so therefore it wasn't an island. Once Corvallis Road is acquired by the city of Independence, now all those properties, not just on the west side of Corvallis Road in this section, are within an island, but also now on the east side, which on the east side, the city of Independence has gained that land through some type of transaction with the state of Oregon, gathering the greenland in order for you guys to put your wells there. So now an island is now created on the west side and the east side. I get right now, our city planner says that you guys do not have plans for the next 5 years to annex in the city. What I want you guys to be aware of is each one of you right now making that decision for 5 years does not guarantee anything. As soon as your seat is filled by somebody else or a new planning person comes in, we are an island and automatically we no longer have a say. Just ask that you would personally consider that the annexation of our properties, though on the east side, it's floodplain, we have no way to develop it, no way to put any additional houses on it or increase our income there. My husband has a job, he's gonna be retiring in 4 years and I work part-time for a nonprofit. So the increase of our city taxes going from county to city would likely increase by $3,000 a year. That's a lot every single month. You guys are already concerned about the city of Independence residents with the cost of $1 something or something with this is really something that will affect us in a major way, have a huge financial impact. And I get that you guys say, if you vote right now to annex Corvallis Road in, don't worry, citizens, you have at least 5 years. And again, it just, any seat that is taken, once an island is there, it can be annexed in without anybody else's say. I just thank you for your time. Thank you for understanding that we really love our properties.
All right, and next up, we have Rick Hopkins.
Good evening, I'm Rick Hopkins. I and my wife Sharon built a house where we live at 6275 Corvallis Road 34 years ago. 7 or 8 years ago, the city of Independence tried to force all properties on the west side of Corvallis Road into city limits, stating that we were an island and there was no recourse available. The annexation was denied because Corvallis Road was not in the city. It appears that since that time, a plan has been in place to not only annex the west side of Corvallis Road, but also the east side. The reason for extending the city limits on the east side of the properties was so that they could sink a well on the old railroad right away. I don't believe it was necessary to annex that property to maintain a well. Across the river are several wells for cities and certainly are not in the city there. The reason I was given for annexing Corvallis Road at this time was so that the city could build a water treatment plant on Corvallis Road. I don't believe that there's any need for that water treatment plant to be in the city limits if they can have across the road, have wells there. When people purchase a building or a home site here in the city already, they can plan on what it's going to cost them and they can consider that when they make the decision to buy a house. If the city annexes properties on Corvallis Road, we owners are shocked with the cost of we do not expect, which will last for many of us seniors as long as we live. I calculated the cost for Sharon and myself to be about $3,000 a year. That's $250 a month. I have to ask you members of the council, as well as staff, Would you vote on this annexation if it was going to cost you an additional $3,000 a year for the rest of your life? And that $3,000 would bring you little or no services that you need. And I say thank you for the opportunity that I have to speak to you today. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, last one, I just double checking, it's for Michael Brown, indicating you do not wish to speak, but I just want to double check in case you changed your mind and want to come in.
Yes, I did.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm Michael Brown and my wife Carol and I live at 64 Vallis Road. We are the largest piece of property on the next to the river on that side. We have a farm, which is under farm control, so we can afford to live there. And we grow produce, apples, blueberries, pumpkins, so. But if we are annexed into the city, what is going to happen with a farm deferral as far as city tax? We have the largest piece of property over there, and so I can't even bet, I don't know what the city tax rate is per thousand. I didn't have time to explore that, but this creates a huge hardship on us with the fact of property taxes, the limitation of our farming ability. This property is not developable, it's floodplain, we've had water there all winter. So it's not a piece of property to exploit, piece of property to enjoy. And I respect your judgment with that.
Those were the questions that I had.
All right. So, okay, so in response to those comments, sort of taking them one by one, I tried to get as much as I could here. So, the first one, in relation to subchapter 11.002 subsection C, that there's not real zoning created, and as such, it requires a hearing before the planning commission. This indeed is annexation and zone change combined. The reason that the zone change is kind of the existing zoning is listed on the front page of the staff report for this. So on page 207, the existing zoning is county, suburban, residential. The proposed zoning is city, no new future land use or zoning proposed. Basically, we do not zone our rights of way, but the county does. And so the zone change is taking it from a county zoning to no zoning, essentially. We manage our right of ways in accordance with our transportation system plan. So it is a zone change, but it's kind of it's a strange zone change. That's the first thing. With relation to the second question about the plan for the roadway and Mr. Hill. The road is anticipated to be developed at a minor arterial standard. Now, how this works is, it's not something that we anticipate going out and doing at one time. How roads tend to get developed is piece by piece as individuals develop their properties. So, things like Freedom Estates dedicated a portion of Vallis Road back in the day when Freedom Estates went in. The individual with the piece of properties at 6525 Vallis Road that I had Myra point on the screen at he, as part of that minor partition, he's dedicating 7 feet and building the curb essentially at where the future width of Vallis Road is anticipated to be. That's how that sort of happens. So we're not gonna come in and say, give us 7 feet or give us, it's gonna be an incremental thing. Little by little as people develop along the road. That's how urban development tends to work. Now, with regard to Sean and Michelle Lewis's comments, I did look at the requirements for island annexation. This would create a strip of road, but specifically in ORS 222.750, it says that a portion, it says that a road can not constitute more than 25% of a corporate boundary when determining an island. So if we drew a line down Corvallis Road and said everything on the east side was part of an island that we were then gonna annex, we couldn't do that because the road would constitute more than 25% of that boundary, if that makes sense. Again, this is intended specifically to develop the roadway in accordance with city standards and ensure that when people develop, they are developing the road in accordance with city standards. Also, one thing that I neglected to mention is the city does, would you like to speak about the water line project real quick?
So as you've heard us talk about for many months now, we do have a regional water treatment plant project that is going into place in that area. The first phase of that is the Corvallis Road Waterline Project, and that Corvallis Waterline Project is federally funded, and it will allow us to put that line in there so that we can provide services. Fred, do you want me to go into the intergovernmental agreement and are you going to touch on that? Okay. So, part of what we're up against here is we do have an intergovernmental agreement with Polk County, and I'll read the pertinent part to you. The City of Independence and Polk County will refrain from the development, creation, or extension of sewer or water service to those areas lying within the UGB, urban growth boundary, but outside the incorporated limits of the City of Independence until such time that such areas are first annexed to the City of Independence. So we can't put in water, we can't put in sewer for those properties that are in the UGB, but not annexed, which means we can't do anything. So, the discussion about you can have your wells out there, we literally cannot do what we need to do because of this agreement. And that's what we're looking at, is we need to annex this. And I don't know if we want to go into it about the urban growth boundary and the expectation of growth.
Yeah, so I will just say too about island annexation. One thing that Michelle brought up was that you would have no say if it was an island annexation. One of the requirements for island annexation, again in ORS 222.750, is that the city may annex territory pursuant to this section after holding at least one public hearing on the question for which notice has been mailed to each record owner of real property in the territory proposed to be annexed. So you would get notice about any annexation. It doesn't mean that we're ever gonna, like I said, that we're ever gonna do it. Our main goal at this point is to annex the right way. That goes to for some of the comments for Rick Hopkins, and then I didn't write down comments for the last one. Maybe I was thinking about the letter itself. Yeah, so as regard to things like expectation of urban growth in this area has been in the urban growth boundary since 1979. This is our original comprehensive plan. And the goal since that point, I mean, almost 50 years at this point, has been that this portion of the city would be part of, or this portion of the urban growth boundary would eventually develop in an urban fashion. And so the expectation is that urban growth will occur in the urban growth boundary at some point. And the intention of this is to aid that process when it does happen. Again, this would not annex any specific individual property. This is specifically the right of way. And I think that's addressing the majority of the comments that we heard.
Mr. Evander, I don't know that you can, but you didn't address the cost increase to these residents.
Yeah,
Can you
so,
address that?
so the cost increase associated with, or the cost increase to these residents only happens if annexation occurs. This would not, increase, or, excuse me. This cost, a cost increase would not occur to them based on the annexation of the road along here. The only way that a cost increase would happen for them is if the properties themselves were annexed. And again, at this point, we have no intention of annexing those individual properties. Also, we can't use the right of way as a justification for creating an island.
Just to follow on, I assume this went through the planning commission.
No, so that's the thing related to subchapter 11020C. That I touched on before. There's a provision for type 3 applications to come directly to council when it's an annexation and zone change proposal. Basically, every annexation you get is an annexation and a zone change proposal, because going from county zoning to city zoning is inevitably a zone change.
And that's fine, but I would certainly feel more comfortable if the planning commission had gone through this first. And given us a recommendation.
I think people have the right to be hesitant. When you came up here earlier, you said the sole reason for this annexation was for control of the roads. And then not until the very end did we hear, no, not really, we have to have it so that we can have a water treatment facility. So it does make people hesitant when you say that it's just for the control of the roads, but no, we can't do the water treatment facility if we do not have control of those roads. So it wasn't transparent. I feel like we're not being transparent with it. Are we planning on putting the water treatment center on the 6th Street annexation?
On 6th Street?
Yeah, and in the area on 6th Street, is it planned, are there any talks whatsoever about putting water treatment on 6th Street?
No, the water treatment plant will go on Corvallis Road, and I don't believe it wasn't transparent, and I respectfully disagree, Counselor. It's just phrasing. We need the roadway. It's all about the roadway. It's not about the property. It is about the roadway. A part of the roadway is the critical water project, right? That's a part of the roadway. We need to put the line in. And, you know, it's not just infrastructure. It's about ensuring clean water continues to flow for all of the community. It is about the roadway. It's simplification of the process, right? For the property owners. It's all about the roadway. When they build, you know, they have to address issues with the roadway. Well, now they have to talk to Polk County and the city. The safer and more consistent, right? It's about the roadway. It's about putting in the speed limits and the zoning. It's all about the roadway. And it reduces government overlap and saves resources. So it is all about roadway. We're not taking these, we're not talking about the properties, just the road.
But wouldn't it make sense for the city of Independence, if we're gonna take on the financial burden of having that roadway, wouldn't it make sense for us to also take on the assets that we would be and the taxes we would get from those properties? I mean, I already stated earlier in this meeting that and this is probably the wrong words, but hopefully you can figure this out what I'm saying, but our debt to income ratio is too high. If we annex all these beautiful properties down there, now we have the ability to build that water treatment facility plant. And so I feel like we're going down this slippery slope where we're saying we're just taking this and in order to reach our conclusion of a water treatment facility, we will have to take in all those properties.
But me,
Yes.
I don't know exactly how much is coming in, but what I can tell you is that tax is not going to be even close. It's not even a drop in the bucket. It is not even a hair's width of a drop in the bucket of what it's going to cost to do the water treatment plant. That's why we're looking at federal grant funding for that. So, you know, it doesn't, the two don't connect. And I also want to clarify, when you're talking about debt, that is general fund debt. Remember, because I can do my bucket thing again. Anyone want to get my bucket thing again?
So our general fund debt is
So we have,
$39.5 million.
so we have significant general fund debt. We also have water debt, we have sewer debt. But the water and the sewer fund are in much better condition than the general fund. And no one wants to hear my bucket discussion, so I won't go into that.
Counselor Source.
Thank you, Mayor. So I actually see this annexation as advantageous to our community as well as these folks. But what I'm hearing from these folks is the concern around future potential annexation. So is there a way for us to clearly communicate or give a buffer of a certain amount of time to these folks that they can plan around and say, for 5 years, for 10 years, we won't do this? Because I'm really sympathetic to what they're saying here. And so that, that's my question, I know that there's only so much we can do to restrict a future council, and I understand that. But is there anything that we can do to give these folks who I think have fair concerns, some kind of recourse?
Yeah, so sometimes with things like island annexations, you can actually hold off on how long before the essentially annexation goes into effect. Again, we're not talking about individual properties. We're talking about the road, but I mean, part of the reason why I say we have no interest in development and annexing, especially to the east side of the river, is for all the reasons that people have said. It's a floodplain, right? There's not a ton of developable property. There's not a whole lot of interest from me, from a city planning perspective, to go out there and try and annex some of these properties, right? It wouldn't solve the city's budget problems. It wouldn't do a whole bunch of things, right? So again, we're specifically interested in the road. We do know that people west of the road who are out of the floodplain will have a desire to annex in the future. We've seen it little by little. We anticipate that will happen when those people, especially west of the road, transfer ownership, they're desiring to develop, and they submit an application, then they're working solely with us for the proposal, rather than trying to work through two jurisdictions to build the grid.
Yeah, can I follow up there?
Yes.
Yeah, no,
I called the county when this came up, and they said, if you guys annex in Corvallis Road, we would have to pay city taxes for being on the county road, but we would also have to pay county taxes because our property is in the county.
It's a good question.
So I put new road in there, that's gonna cost us all a ton.
So we've closed our public testimony for the hearing at this point, so we're debating the council questions. To Councilor Source.
so I guess my question. I understand what you're saying, Fred, and I get it, but I also hear these folks and I hear their concern, and I hear unanticipated costs associated with the development, which they never. I understand there's always that risk when you buy property in urban boundary that's not in the city. But when they bought these properties, that wasn't part of the conversations. This weren't things that folks were aware of. So I guess my question is there a way for the city to clearly communicate in some kind of resolution and some kind of statement that says for this timeline, east side of Corvallis Road, there is not an interest to annex for, as we work on, we have buildable land within the city limits, we have other projects that we're intending to do. This is not a priority for the city.
I guess I would like to, we have a stack of questions here, but,
Yeah.
that's a slippery slope, right? Because then if we open that up, then everybody could claim that same argument, right? If they're within the urban growth boundary, but outside the city limits, no matter where they're at in the city. So I think we have to be careful and consider the precedent that could set. I agree, I'm aware of the concern of the tax instruction would be different if it's brought into the city limits. But I don't know that we can guarantee or control, and I know Councilman Morton has a question as well.
I had a couple of points. First of all, if I was one of the property owners and I had heard you say, as I think I heard you say tonight, that annexing that road does not give a pathway to annexing the property. Is that correct?
Right, well, based on the island annexation provisions, it says that an island annexation cannot be. An island cannot be created if a road is constituting more than 25% of the boundary of the island. Now, if I drew a line, essentially where that yellow line is on that map. And said, okay, that's our boundary for the east side of Corvallis Road, we're gonna annex that island. We couldn't do that, because I imagine that would be more than 25%.
Okay, then as that property owner, I would like a letter from the city that says that.
Amen.
I still have a letter in my files at home that is a stay of execution on a maple tree in my front yard, rather than when we did some redevelopment, put in a sidewalk, which was the ordinance at the time. So I want a letter that says that I'm not going to be affected in terms of creating an island because of the condition with annexing the road.
I guess that would satisfy,
Yeah.
And also, I remember reading through this packet, are there other options for drilling under the road or taking some other steps to reach the property that is needed for the development of the water treatment plant?
I mean, so specifically, we're not supposed to be extending our water utilities outside of our city limits. Now, we know that we've done it in the past. That was something that got done way long time ago.
When we were a littler city.
Yeah, way long time ago. But our current agreement says that we're gonna keep our existing city utilities in the city.
And is that a condition of the grants that we have applied for too?
I'm honestly not certain. I think Kevin could speak to that more and Gerald could speak to that more.
Okay,
And Gerald can speak to it much more than I can, but what I can say as far as the funding is we are risking the funding.
is what?
We are risking the funding. We are risking.
Okay, risking the funding.
We are risking getting if the road is the important part. And if we don't get the water line in, we can't do the project.
And I will just say, it's a whole lot easier project if we're doing the project ourselves rather than working through another.
Understood. But again, I would go back to saying, if there is a way, and I know nothing is a guarantee, but at least for the city to make a statement that under current rules and regulations, annexing this road does not put you in the position of becoming an island.
Yeah, I'd be happy to write that.
Councilman Lewis?
Thank you. So does owning a property adjacent to a city-owned road make that property susceptible to city taxes?
I don't believe so, and I'll specifically point to the properties on Sixth Street, because Sixth Street, when I was calling and asking the county assessor about how what would happen essentially to their assessment. Those properties which are on Maple and whatever the other street is, down there, they are taxed one at county level and one at city level. They actually get two separate assessments. And you can actually see that on the individual tax record. And so even though they are on a city street, there's still tax, portions of those properties are still taxed at the county level, the portion that's in the county.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the Corvallis Road properties.
Right, and the only reason I jumped over to Sixth Street is I haven't looked at Corvallis Street and looked specifically at the properties that are along Corvallis Street, like some of the unincorporated ones right now, if they're taxed at a county level, I would imagine that they are. What I was specifically saying is the ones that I have looked at on Sixth Street, yeah, indeed, even though they're on the city street, they're taxed at a county level.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the unknown variables in here. I'm concerned about what she said about taxes. We don't know the answer to that question. I'm concerned about getting a letter to people so that they know that they're an island or not. So for those reasons, I would like to put forward the following motion that we table. I move that we table these annexations and send this back to.
We're still in the public hearing. It's not an action.
Public hearing first, sorry.
So one thing that you can do is you could make a motion to continue the public hearing on a date certain. And continue the public hearing at that time, and you could request staff to find additional information related to things like what would happen to that taxation for a property on a city road. And that sort of stuff.
Fred has prepared, so we do need to make a decision on if we can close the hearing and then consider the council bill. To include the changes, we can modify the proposal, request additional information, deny the proposal, but we can need to provide staff with direction tonight on where we want to go.
Or move to recess the public hearing and
Continue it on.
reconvene at a date certain.
Yeah,
Do we have a good date for that?
are we thinking the meeting in May, yeah?
We could do the
Wait,
meeting.
time out. How come she can do that?
You could do it.
That's what I was saying, you could do that as well. That's what I was just saying.
do that. I'm just trying to clarify what.
Since we close the meeting, then I can put forth my motion and we can get it on and figure it out.
So Council wrote it, you are correct. You have, at this point in time, it's a public hearing. The public hearing can be, leave the record open. And then it would be set over to a date certain, which would be the first meeting of May. And then more information would be provided. You would not go on to the next one, so you would not be able to make your motion. If the public hearing closes and isn't left open until, you could vote your motion in May, if it closes. If it's left open, if it's closed, then we would go to the council bill and you could make your motion on the action item. Did I clarify?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that you all make whatever action that you want to make.
So we need to decide on the hearing first before we can.
Correct.
I would just, thank you, Mayor. I would just like to make sure that whenever we schedule that our public works director can be here, since he's kind of the expert in some of these some things, and some of the questions I have are directly to public works specific situations here.
Mayor, may I first?
Yes.
Myra, do you have Gerald's calendar by any chance?
Sure.
If not, if I could be excused, I could go look at his calendar very quickly, but it would take me for just a few minutes.
Think I can get it.
Anything?
Well, my question is, if we do close this hearing and I put forth the motion and we send this back to planning, because planning should be able to look at all these concerns anyway, right? Is that not a legitimate path?
See, but as a former planning commissioner, we changed some of the state required us to be honest, if I understand correctly. We changed some of the criteria, and this is one that has to go directly to council because of it. So that's why this is kind of wonky, because you're right that planning didn't get that review, but it's because we were kind of forced to change our policy around certain criteria. Certain, yeah, so it's really appropriate for us.
Yes.
Yeah,
So we can request more information, but we can't kick it back to, we can't, kick it to, thank you.
I apologize, we are double checking. It looks like he has something. Same thing. So what it appears is that he is probably available on May 13th.
May 13th.
May 13th.
and may I ask one more question? Thank you. City Manager West, is there I know you were saying we're risking federal funds by delaying, so is there like a, we need to make this decision by this date kind of deal?
Well, there's a lot of chaos at the national level. And I cannot provide an absolute answer, but I believe 1 month is not going to be too damaging.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I could be wrong, but
Would you like to make a motion to? During the boot meeting after two, they didn't start.
Sure, I'd like to motion that we carry this meeting forward to May 13th and reconvene at that time with the public hearing.
I second that. Well, we have to make sure we save the clear, keep the record of.
Yeah, so we have to state that we're leaving the record open until a date certain, which is May 13th. And then if we have any requested information, like, do we want staff to bring back
Yeah.
specific information we need to include?
Aren't you actually leaving the hearing open, not just the record?
We're leaving the hearing. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
the hearing
Okay,
is.
so then I make a motion to leave the hearing open. And I'd like the staff to bring back more information on the potential letter for the island. Potential conflicts of whether they're gonna be paying taxes double or not, like concrete written information on that, so people can plan for their future.
Can I ask one thing?
No, sorry.
Just,
there's-
there's an alley.
Mayor, if I may.
No.
Yep.
So you can do that.
On the taxing information, we can, Council Roden, on the taxing information. I don't know that we'll be able to get letters back and forth in time, but I can direct my staff to make calls and provide them. If that be sufficient for the council, okay, yes, thank you. So letter regarding,
Tax implications.
no, taxing information would be memorandum from the staff. A letter regarding the island discussion. Did I get
Yes.
that Right, okay. Anything else?
What else am I missing?
Do we want information? I'm sorry, but the,
I know they can't, but they
Mayor.
can.
No, they can't actually point of
The
order.
right of way, more information on the right of ways.
The right of way width, if we, I mean, I think just clarifying, right, that we're not going to be going beyond. The width of the right of way. Yes.
And did you want any additional information on the funding mechanism? Right?
And we actually, that is one thing I'd like to know is how much is this gonna cost the city to take over this roadway? What additional costs are we gonna bear?
Funding mechanism, I was talking about the grants. The $880,000.
How much how much it's gonna cost us? What is the financial burden on the city to take over Corvallis Road, Hoffman Road, and 6th Street?
I think Gerald already addressed that, frankly, when he gave the presentation on it, that we're already doing some of it anyway, so it's really not an impact to us.
Could I ask for a reading of what the actual
Yeah, we
motion
need to
is?
redo the motion, because it's, all over the place at this point.
There was motion to leave the hearing open until a date certain, May 13th, with this staff recommendations to answer the questions. Yes. Is that correct?
Okay, then that motion I second.
So we have a motion by Councilor Roden with a second by Councilor Morton. Do a roll call? Discussion, any more discussion at this point?
Counselor Court,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis,
Aye.
Counselor Gover.
Aye.
Counselor Roden, aye, Counselor Source.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. So we will not be doing the next agenda item. Right. Of the council. But we do have another public hearing, correct? You are correct. All right, let me make sure I'm grabbing the right papers. I don't have that. So we're moving on to the second, public hearing, so I'm gonna go ahead and read this. Read the script. This evening, we have a public hearing on annexation number 2024-04 to consider annexation and rezoning of 8.9 acres at 6675 Corrales Road, located west of the Southern Pacific Railroad, along with a portion of the 50-foot right-of-way that is located directly north of the property. The city council will make a final decision on the proposal based on the complete record, including the testimony received at tonight's public hearing. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and state of Oregon. This is the type 3 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's development code, comprehensive plan, and or state of Oregon statewide planning rules. For anyone wishing to speak, we are asking you to use the speaker cards that are provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and you must state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any councilor wish to declare an actual or a potential conflict of interest in this matter? All right, hearing none. I will now open the public hearing for AX 2024-04 annexation and rezoning of 8.9 acres at 6675 Corrales Road, located west of the Southern Pacific Railroad, along with a portion of the 50-foot right-of-way that is located directly north of the property. May we please have the step?
Perfect, yes, oops, perfect, yes, can you put up the map on page 278, please, Myra? So for this annexation, we are talking about 8.9 acre piece of property at 6675 Corvallis Road. You can see it on this map that is west of the railroad that goes through the community, and it's also just east of 6th Street. Mountain Fir Avenue runs directly into the property just to orient folks to the site. It is part of, it is essentially part of a larger ownership. And this is just specifically annexing the western portion of the property. The existing zoning is county suburban residential. The proposed zoning is city low density residential. Again, it's an annexation and a zone change together. As such, it's a type 3 application. Basically, the site has Monmouth water facility to the north. It has residential development to the west, and county unincorporated urban growth boundary land to the east. Basically, the request is to annex and to take the zoning. We have looked at it in regards to the things like the Oregon State planning goals, the City of Independence Development Code, the Independence Comprehensive Plan, and all of those standards. Again, this is a portion of the city that, or a portion of the county that was in the growth boundary since 1979. It has been anticipated to be developed at urban densities for a long time. All of our facility plans consider this site developable and consider how it might be developed. So the relevant water, sewer, road facilities that will be necessary. So as such, things like goal 14, the urbanization standard, is clearly met. Things like goal 10, it would help us achieve goal 10, the housing provisions. And also things like Goal 5, the natural resource provisions as well are met. I do recommend 2 conditions associated with this annexation. One is that the applicant shall assist the city in the submittal of a wetland land use notification for any future development on the site. And 2, the future development will be required to meet City of Independence standards, including but not limited to the Independence Public Works Design Standards, the Independence Development Code. We've run this through the normal process that we run all annexations through. We send it to people within 250 feet of the property. We also posted the notice of this annexation on the project site. We have not heard any public comments in relation to this annexation, but perhaps some people in the audience are here to talk tonight. My recommendation is that you approve this annexation. It is consistent with our comprehensive plan, our facilities plans and all of that sort of stuff. Are there any questions to me?
Am I correct, based on the documentation we received, this is a request to be annexed by the property owner?
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. And I should say one thing, the city does have a piece of right of way directly to the north of it. It's 50 feet wide. It's a portion of the old rail that used to go west and east across the site there. You can see it better on the next page, perhaps, Myron. You can see there's a gray right of way you can see on that annexation right there. That is a portion of city owned land. When the property owner submitted his request, we talked about it. We thought that it made good sense to include our right of way in the annexation as well to make a logical and coherent boundary to the city. So that is part of this request as well.
And one follow-up question, there is no possibility that the railroad still has any rights to any of this property?
I don't believe so.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is because when the hotel was developed, there dig down and a railroad spur was found and it had a cost attached to it.
So this person's planning on building a bunch of residential units and their only entrance on and off of that property would be from Alice Road.
So that's a great question. This exits west out of the site to 6th Street. So Fourth and 7th realistically would be the main accesses out. What I should say is this is the first step in a larger development process. First, you get the property into a city. Then you submit something like a subdivision application where things like transportation impacts are considered. Things like how you can actually serve the site with utilities, water and sewer. That occurs at the subdivision time. Then detailed public works design drawings are done. And then we actually see construction start on the site, things like roads getting put in and all that sort of stuff that people roll with building permits. That's sort of how it goes from annexation to ultimate build out. Things like transportation impacts are not one of the criteria that we're allowed to consider at the annexation phase. We consider transportation impacts. It's not one of our criteria that we evaluate annexations based on. We evaluate transportation impacts at the time of subdivision. So when, if and when this site develops, there will be a transportation impact analysis to consider how folks get out of this subdivision. It might be a requirement to go east toward Ballas Road. It might be a requirement to have something like a light at 7th Street. Or whatever it might be. There's that analysis will happen at the time of subdivision.
Does it still give us right though? I'm sorry if I'm mistaken here. Mountain Fir Avenue does not go through that property currently. Do we still have the right? Is it still in the plans to put it through? Because I noticed on one map, there's an arrow with dashed lines going through it, but.
Yeah, so the, well. I don't know that. Mount Fur is anticipated to be a southern arterial going west and east through the community. We do anticipate Mount Fur Avenue to connect from that point where it's shown coming. There's a stub of it at Sixth Street right now that goes in. We anticipate that going through eventually to Corvallis Road. So yes, there will be a requirement associated with the development of that site to build out their portion of Mount Fur Avenue. Potentially, it will include a requirement to go east toward Corvallis Road, but that depends on what the transportation impact analysis will say.
Further questions of staff? All right, we do have public testimony for this. First up would be Dakota, I believe it's Hudson. No, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. You guys actually hit on a lot of the points that I was going to bring up today, but
Can you state your name and address?
sorry, yes, Dakota Hutzman, and I'm at 1523 South Sixth Street. I got you that, thank you. That's why I'm here. A lot of the points you guys bring up tonight are the exact reason that I am here. And when a rock starts rolling down a mountain, the fastest way to stop it is to get it before it gets going a little bit too fast. So while I understand a lot of this, my points I'm gonna bring up tonight really do have to do more along the lines of when a development is pushed. I want this stuff to be in the minds of everyone present here in the council as well as city planners moving forward. Exactly like what you brought up, Councilor Rodman, the only way in and out of this location currently is South Sixth or Seventh Street. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that area. I'm going to make the assumption that some of you guys are not, so forgive me if I'm speaking to something you guys are familiar with. The fastest way currently to Corvallis Road from that area is to go all the way down South Sixth and either turn down Maple or, the streets of the West Job, Spruce Avenue, and then head up Fourth Street, which then takes you all the way up. And then you would hang a right, and that would take you up to Corvallis Road. Fourth Street is not fully developed. There is only sidewalk on one side of the street. A lot of that road has already suffered. There's a lot of potholes in that road. It definitely needs some attention paid to it. In general, with this sort of option moving forward. The other thing is, it's really easy to look at these pictures and how pretty they are in yellow and stuff, but looking at the actual property from Google Maps, it is currently heavily forested area. So keep in mind that when this goes to be developed, you're forcing out quite a bit of animal habitat. That land is quite well habitated with animals. We used to have a lot of deer, turkeys, all sorts of other animals. There's actually some, raccoon encroachment to properties out there. The other thing is my concern is the safety. There's a lot of multi-generational families towards the end of Sixth Street as well as Seventh Street. Their kids are out on those roads playing. We're gonna turn those into MSRs and potentially put those kids at risk. That's a straightway. I can tell you that it's definitely used as a racetrack more often than not by a lot of individuals down there. If that's chief, you guys have been present down there a lot more often. I do appreciate that, but they can't be down there all the time. These are just things that I think need to be considered when we're looking at this annexation, specifically emergency egress, talking about the 2040 plan moving forward. There are specific things in there talking about emergency management to the planning of roads and whatnot. Is currently being annexed in and potentially moving forward to development. I do not believe matches up with the 2040 plan. Thank you.
Can I make one comment on that? Thank you for your comments, and if and when this property is developed, I would get myself down to the traffic commission and sit in on some of their meetings.
Don't worry, I'll be here.
The planning commission. And next up, we have Michelle Lewis.
Yeah, Michelle Lewis, 6240 Corvallis Road. And really, it's just questions. As my sister was annexed in 2018 at 6309 Corvallis Road. At the time of development of that property, she was stressed by I'm not sure if it was city planner or whatnot, but when it came down to sewer and water, that area is extremely stressed right now. And so just concerns for the city council to be aware that there really are no new services available in that area to support a subdivision. Which again, I know that you're trying to plan for, but nothing's in place right now. Thank you.
Any questions, sorry, yeah.
And for the clarification on the, for the developer, they would have to then consider the water, the sewer, the infrastructure at that time.
That's exactly right. So, how things like that how things like that work. We have facility plans that essentially, and you've looked at them. They look at the entire city, they say, if we're serving, and they assume that the entire, they look at the entire urban growth boundary. And they assume that the entire urban growth boundary will be built out at a certain point. So they ask the question, how could the entire urban growth boundary be built out? What sort of facilities are going to be required where? Based on the units anticipated on the property. This site has been considered as part of those plans, and so there are anticipated improvements that would be necessary. Anybody that goes forward with the development of that site will know the improvements that are gonna be necessary. We would definitely recommend pre-application to come in to find out what's gonna be required and all of that sort of stuff to actually make development on the site work. But again, the facilities plans have considered how to serve that site. As regards to things like safety, emergency egress and animal habitat. Emergency egress is definitely something that will be considered as part of this. There are requirements related to the maximum number of lots on a dead end road. Our fire marshal in particular, who works for Polk County Fire District 1, is really interested in how to get better access to this site, and it's likely that another way in would be necessary as part of any development of the site. Now, that might just be a fire access to get a fire truck in there, but it would likely be required as part of the development of the site. Again, I can't say for certain because we don't have a development proposal in front of us. We evaluate development proposals based on how they look, what they're doing. As regards to things like safety and straightaways, yeah, definitely. Things like traffic enforcement, it's a good thing, but the things like participating in the traffic safety commission to find out how to reduce speeds to roads, that's a great thing. 7th and 6th are both very straight, we definitely know. As regards to things like animal habitat, really the whole Oregon land use planning framework is intended to have growth inside cities, so areas outside cities can sort of be naturals, so they can be farmlands and whatnot. And so while there would be a reduction in things like animal habitat inside the city, again, that's for a larger statewide planning goal of preserving animal habitat outside the city. So that's some of the responses to that.
Just to make sure, so when we're looking at this specifically, the part of the criteria is not traffic at this moment. Would it be safe to assume that we also should not be looking at down 7th Street currently? There's only one entrance or one exit, and it's kind of a bottleneck down there. We still need to fix that area, and it was already developed, and we already have a bottleneck situation down 7th Street. So that's a big concern of mine. But that's probably not part of this criteria.
That's right, transportation impact analysis will happen at the time of subdivision.
Then it probably is not part of this criteria either to worry about the impact on our local schools, to have a whole bunch of more people coming to our local schools. That would not be appropriate at this time either, right?
That's not one of our criteria either. So
That's a school board.
Yeah, we don't have a jurisdiction. School board is a.
Further questions of staff? All right, are we ready to close the hearing? All right. I now declare record and hearing closed. We will now move on to the next agenda item. For potential. I'm sorry. All right, item number 7.6, Council Bill 2025-04 to annex and designate 8.9 acres at 675 Wells Road. And I will staff, report.
Oh, yeah. I thought I was done talking, I was back, I was happy, but essentially, this council bill is to make an action. Or to take action on the previous staff report, so again, this is for the annexation of 6.9 acres. And the 50-foot right of way directly to the north, it would change the zoning of those properties from county suburban residential to city, low density residential. Are there any questions that you have?
An action item.
I move to approve Council Bill 2025-03 to adopt AX 2025-01, the text of which is contained in the council packet, and read the proposed ordinance for the first time.
Second.
Point of order, like, is it not 202504, Clara? Am I looking at the wrong? It is 202504.
Okay,
Should be on.
Oh,
I amend my motion to say 2025-04.
And I agree with that still for a second.
thank you. We have a first by Core, a second by Morton. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call.
Counselor Source,
Aye.
Counselor Roden, nay, Counselor Blair.
Aye.
Counselor Martin Lewis,
Aye.
Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Counselor Clark.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes. Now, move to second.
I move to read the proposed ordinance Council Bill 2025-.
Oh, sorry.
To go to the second.
Was it not? I'm sorry.
It
No,
wasn't.
No, no.
Wasn't unanimous.
oh, it's not.
So, I see something.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's important, and I know I stepped out to rent the restroom, but it's important for the public to hear. There's only certain criteria we can consider, or we're gonna get sued. And so, you know, to my colleague, you know, you have every right to vote no. I'm not saying you can't vote no, but I think it's important for us to say that our yes votes don't necessarily mean we don't agree with some of your concerns. It's that people have property rights in the United States of America and the state of Oregon. And if we don't follow certain conditions, they will sue us and they will win. So, I just wanna make sure that when we vote no on these things, we do that understanding that if we go along with that no vote, the property owner has a right to sue us and it will cost the city money to defend that decision in court. And we will lose because it's not a consideration we're allowed to take. So I just want to make sure that we're saying that in a public meeting for folks to understand that, because it's an important point.
Thank you. I do think that's an important point, and that we do have mechanisms. This is, as Mr. Evander pointed out, this is the first step in a lengthy process. So concerns that we have about the transportation impacts and other things are going to be addressed in that planning process. And I agree with Councilor Source, we have to be very careful that we are basing these opinions based on our codes and ordinances and not personal opinion.
And the discussions, then I do need to read it by title, to finish that first motion,
Yes.
even though it wasn't unanimous, it still passed. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, an ordinance declaring territory annexed to the city of Independence and amending the zoning map for portions of tax lot 200 and to the 101 map AS 4W 33 and stating an effective date. And then the second motion would come back at the next meeting if you would consider it at that time.
Okay. So there's nothing more for us to do tonight, correct?
No.
Okay. All right. We need to appoint some people and then we will.
Mayor, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Yes,
5-minute recess.
There are restrooms behind you. That is, I will break.
Yes.
All right. Now you know why I was so just like at the beginning, like, let's race it.
I know.
Here we are, 9 o'clock. We're getting close. In the home stretch. All right, are we ready, Maya? Yes. All right, so we are on to 7.7 board committee commissions appointments. I know we've had several people in the audience who've been very, very patient, as we learn all about budget stuff and financials and annexation, so. With that, I will turn over to City Manager West for the staff report.
I will make a very quick staff report, as everyone knows, this is a new process. And council, if you will turn to page 316, there is a discussion about how this can proceed based on my discussion with our contracting attorney and in review of the charter. We of course get to do exactly what you would like to do, but the process that we came up with that does comply with the charter is that the mayor can begin by announcing her recommended appointments for the first committee, which would be the budget committee. If the council so chooses, a motion and second will be made to approve the appointment, followed by council discussion. If you vote to approve the appointments, that the mayor will then proceed to the next committee on the list, which would be the planning commission. And then the same process would follow through. If the council does not make a motion, or there's no second received, or a vote to approve is not made, then the mayor may choose to delay the appointment to a later time or select different appointees for consideration. So.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Mayor. City Manager West, I really appreciate this new process. There was a couple of applicants who indicated multiple interests in multiple positions. In the future, if we can have a question of preference, I think that'd be helpful. Because if there's a preference, we'd like to give people the seat that they prefer over multiple. And there, I appreciate that members of our community indicated that they would be willing to serve on multiple committees, but that information would be helpful. Thank you.
All right, ready to jump in? So first up is the budget committee, and I do want to say that I know, just to be transparent about my process, I looked for a diversity of thought and also service. I think it's good for us to get multiple representations from our community, which is one of the reasons why we are choosing the process that we're choosing. So for the budget committee, we do have 3 positions that are open. This one is time sensitive. So my 3 recommended, in no particular order, Jessica Porter, Bradley Karkinen, sorry, I don't say that correctly, and then Dana Shaw.
Did you go through that again, Mayor?
Jessica Porter, Bradley Karkinen, did I say that right there? Okay, thank you, and then also Dana Shaw. And with that, I'd be happy to open it up for discussion.
A motion?
Or a motion? Sorry, a motion.
We're all ready for discussion.
I had a different set of 3 than you had, but,
This is kind of confusing. Because if we're supposed to all have input on what it is, and that's the new guidelines, and the mayor puts forth a motion. Then how do, I just don't know the answer to that. How do, like, if she put forth 3 different people, how does she get her voice heard?
So, I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, isn't this the right of the mayor to appoint, and our job is to say consent or say no? But it's, you are the mayor, and this is a role of the mayor to appoint to boards and commissions, and not a role of city council. Correct?
That is correct, and the mayor has provided this opportunity for the council. And if I recall, let's see if I put it in here, the charter is the mayor is authorized to make appointments to city committees, and all appointments shall be approved by vote of the council.
And bearing that in mind, which I read that part too, and I definitely have full faith in you. I would move to appoint your 3 named selections to the budget committee.
Second.
I'll second it pending discussion.
Fair, yep, no, that's fair. So we'll open it up to discussion.
I had 2 of the same people that you did, Mayor. The only other person I had, my third would have been Willis Holman, and the reason why was he has both state and municipal budget experience.
And that was one that I had put on my list as well. But also know that I'm gonna keep this list of people, because these are all folks
They're all very,
volunteer.
things that we have, and I have not discussed this with Willis, so. But we need to appoint someone also to the minor budget committee. So
But that's not on this.
this is separate from this. So again, looking at a diversity of where people can serve in our community. So that was part of my thought process behind that.
Okay. Well, I stand by my motion.
I trust your opinion. I think if these are the people you think we should put forward are the best, I hope that they truly bring diversity of thought into our budgeting committee, so that we can try to produce the best solid product from diversity of thought. I think it would have been interesting to see Mike Rhodes in this, although he does live in the New Park, he does bring a lot of knowledge, I don't think on his application, he had a lot of budgeting experience that I saw, but he does have a passion for the community that I thought would have been a great asset on our budget.
And this may be a little bit of shock, he was one of my 3 as well.
That is. I agree on.
Yeah. And it was a matter of diversity of voice, he has been very outspoken. And I felt it could be a good thing to give him an official understanding of how the process works. He seems to be offering a whole lot of solutions. And I would just welcome the opportunity for him to solve our budget woes.
And just to agree with you one more time. He speaks a big game, it would be great to see him play the game and see if he can actually do what he's speaking, and so that would be an interesting thing for him to do. It would be someone to consider.
Call for the question.
Councilor Moore.
Aye.
Councilor Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Nay.
Councilor Water.
Aye.
Councilor Rose. Nay. Councilor Swartz.
Aye.
Motion passes to appoint Jessica Porter, Bradley Harkinen, and Dana Shannon to the budget committee.
I have a question. Since there's different positions with different timeframes, does the mayor have to, should we clarify who's getting what?
Mayor, that would be great.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but because there's different timelines, it's probably important to do that.
Yeah, that's true, sorry. I would like to propose that Jessica Porter is in position number 5. I'm sorry.
Even though it's No, I agree. She's been on it for a long time.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was looking at just the opposite.
Okay. And the other 2, I mean. The other 2
That
expired,
no, that
so
makes-
Bradley could be position 2 and Dana could be position 3.
Perfect.
All right, so we're set on that. Thank you all for patience as we get through this new process. Planning committee, my recommendation is for Patrick Huebman. I said your last name correctly, so that would be the,
What did you say?
Patrick Huebman.
Oh, thank you.
I would, move to approve that nomination.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve by Source and a second by Martin Willis.
Can I say something?
Yes.
You know, I've seen Patrick at pretty much every city function and meeting. In my time being involved over the last couple of years, so I appreciate. The dedication you have to our city, and I look forward to seeing what you can do to I think this is actually my old planning commission seat, so what you can do to replace me on the commission. So I look forward to seeing that, and thank you for your dedication.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this would be for position number 1. So with that, roll call.
And we have discussion. I'm sorry, my only concern with him is that, he hasn't lived in our community for a very long time. It appears that he doesn't even work within our community. And so it would be nice if, I mean, it looks like he has a great profile and hopefully he'll do a great job. But it would be nice if we could get someone who lived in our community a lot longer.
Any other questions, concerns?
I'm sure I'll offer the ways this is actually where I had selected Bradley. But I can also see where, planning commission is a pretty constrained position. I mean, they have very specific criteria. I don't know that, being a long-term resident is as important as maybe some of the other, commissions. So yeah, I would support Patrick in that position as well.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilor Ford.
Aye.
Councilor Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Waver.
Aye.
Councilor Roden. Aye. Councilor Source.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes and thank you. All right, for HPC, we really, I mean, we're still have, so my recommendation is that we appoint Jennifer Flores and Dwayne. And then Catherine Underwood Bush for the HPC. And then I would say, let's appoint them to positions 2, 3, and 5.
And I would move to approve those 3 appointments as indicated on the documentation we got. And as a sidebar, this is not part of the motion. I would encourage Mr. Holman to see if he'd be a good fit for the Historic Preservation Committee. Oh, I see a thumbs up
A
back.
hint. All right, thank you. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilor Morton and a second by Martin Willis.
Second.
Sorry.
Sorry, I thought you were looking for a motion.
Oh, sorry.
Whatever you're looking for, you got it.
I'm tired. We're all good, all right. Any discussion, any further discussion on this?
My only concern is, it may not be a legitimate one, you'll tell me, that Catherine Underwood Bush, is currently, remodeling a beautiful historic property in Independence, and I'm hoping that that won't provide a conflict of interest, and that if it does, she'll be able to bow out. But other than that, I support this whole group. I think they're great.
All right, thank you. With that, ready for the roll call?
Before we do that, Mayor, may I just clarify so that we get them in the right place? And Devane number 5 or position 5, Jennifer Flores position 3, and Catherine Underwood Bush position 2.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now. Councilor Source.
Aye.
Councilor Roden. Aye. Councilor Waver.
Aye.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Ford.
Aye.
Did we not add Willis to that list?
Are we empowered to do that at this point or not?
We got an application on file.
The mayor can add if she would like, or she can consider it based upon whether you know on my net. It is at the mayor's choice.
I'm fine.
Good.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay,
In that case,
yeah,
I move to also appoint Willis Holman to position number 1 on the Historic Preservation Commission.
Second. Okay, wait a minute, you're putting him on the shortest term?
Well, we already
filled the others.
did 5, 3, and 2.
It could be a test run.
There you go.
There you
Yeah,
It could reinforce.
well, let's just fill out your application to renew when you walk into the first meeting.
Can do.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second.
May I ask, did we ever do roll call on the first motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I apologize.
That could have made it. All right, so we've looked at it, second, do we have any discussion? Hearing none,
Right down here.
what's that?
You had a second.
I had second.
Yeah, no, I know.
No,
Do we have
discussion.
Oh, discussion.
Oh, no,
Okay.
discussion.
I wanted to apologize for addressing the audience because I know I shouldn't do that.
I'm tired. All right, with that, let's do a roll call on, Historic Preservation Commission.
Counselor Ford,
Aye.
Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis,
Aye.
Counselor Boisvert.
Aye.
Counselor Roden,
Aye.
Counselor Source.
Aye.
All right, thank you, motion passes, and congratulations to everyone. Heritage Museum Board is the next one, again, we have, two applicants, Jasper Smith and Kathleen Rice. All the positions kind of expired at the same time, we still have one open vacant position, which we can circle back with some of the other applicants on, but for now, we can vote to approve those two.
I move to approve the 2 applicants. You want to put in position 1, position 4?
Sure. We have a second.
Oh, second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilor Corr, second by Councilor Martin Willis. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call.
Counselor Source,
Aye.
Counselor Roden,
Aye.
Counselor Boisvert,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis,
Aye.
Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Parks Board, again, similar situation. We have 2 applicants, Jasper Smith and Bill Henley. So I'm recommending that they are appointed. Jasper can be, what's it? Jasper can be position 1 and Bill can be position 6.
I move to approve as noted.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Corr, a second by Councilor Morton. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call.
Counselor Ford,
Aye.
Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis,
Aye.
Counselor Boisvert,
Aye.
Counselor Roden, Counselor Source.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Last one, we have the Traffic Safety Commission. Again, we have one applicant, Kelly McWilliams. So we will have one position still remaining open. I recommend that we put her in that position 3.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Corr, second by Martin Willis. Any discussion?
I guess I should just clarify that Kelly McWilliams has filed ethics complaints against me multiple times. 19 she filed in election before last. I am liaison on that commission. It would be interesting, I'm sure I could work with her, but it is a interesting dynamic to have someone who has put filed multiple charges against me for ethics violations on the same committee.
Mayor. It is perfectly within Ms. McWilliams' rights to file complaints against elected officials. It was not an ethics complaint, it was a campaign finance concern.
Sorry, you're right, yours was an ethics complaint.
All right, any further discussion?
Counselor Source,
Aye.
Counselor Roden,
Nay.
Counselor Boisvert,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis,
Aye.
Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Counselor Ford.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. We got through that. Thank you for the patience, and again, thank you for, I know this is in the process and we're still working some of the kinks out, but I do deeply appreciate the input that we had and the number of applicants that we got for this. So, yeah, thank you to everyone who participated. And then for I will follow up with a few of the applicants that didn't get selected for positions to see if they would want to fill some of the other open ones that are still there, so.
And do we need to address the Maya budget committee or not?
That's separate from the council building, I think that, so, we don't need to discuss that today. Does anyone have any announcements they want to make?
Yes. This Friday night at 6 o'clock at Valkyrie Wine Tavern is a no-host first get-together of anyone who is interested in volunteering with or working on or being a part of the Independence Ghost Walk.
And I have one quick thing. I just really wanna thank the folks who submitted applications.
Yes.
For, it was really nice, spending a long lunch hour today, perusing resumes and looking at some of the great people that we have in our community that are ready to step up and participate. So, thank you.
Appreciate it.
And thanks, and we do this every quarter.
Yeah, there's more opportunities.
Thanks to the communications management, David, about the commissions, appreciate that.
I would like to make a shameless plug for the Youth Coding League, right, Patrick, if I remember they made it through the first round of voting, or 5 to 6.
Oh, yeah, so. I may make.
Yes, please.
So Youth Coding League playoffs, voting ended yesterday for the first round, they will
Okay.
open up tomorrow. And our time, 11 hour, I can't remember, they're all central time, so tomorrow afternoon, Thursday afternoon. We will post things on the library social media feed with links for how people can go and support the one representative from the library that's moving on nationally.
Very cool, thank you. Any other announcements? All right, that we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.